People tell me that our boys nowadays have no adventure in them. I don't believe them. I found that our boys in the Scouts learn to be backwoodsmen, self-reliant and able to look after themselves, even though they are brought up in cities and towns.
Teachers recognised that there was something very special about him, but there wasn't anything particularly academic. They recognised that he had this extraordinary charm. He was a very good talker very early on. He was a very good communicator. And he used to never waste a minute.
When I was a boy at Charterhouse, I got a lot of fun out of trapping rabbits. I shinned up the nearest ivy-clad tree where I could nestle unobserved above the line of sight of the average searcher.
As a young child, Baden-Powell obviously felt that he should be the clown of the family and cheer everybody up, but later this developed into an interest in amateur dramatics and pageantry and music. Initially, his mother had wanted him to be an academic, but in fact he showed great aptitude in entry exams for military training.
I started teaching scouting to young soldiers in my regiment. The scheme worked. The men loved the training, and scouting became very popular in the regiment. I wrote a little book called Aids to Scouting for soldiers. It taught them observation, or how to track, and it taught them deduction, or how to read the information given by the tracks.
When scouting took off, it surprised him as much as anyone else. I'm not quite sure what drove him, but he had a very strong moral sense to do good.
When children actually met him, it wasn't the aspect of the military hero that most fascinated them. It was his character, his enthusiasm, his charisma, which kept them interested.
Hello, you boy in the corner there. You ought to be a Boy Scout. You're a fine-looking fella, and I know you would make a jolly good backwoodsman by the look of you. You're ugly enough anyway.
He said once that good humour is as catching as the measles. So, he was one of these early pioneers of the soundbite.
We try to make these boys and girls into what we call the 3 H's. That is, happy, healthy, helpful citizens.
He said it was much better to be kind than to be clever, much better to be helpful than to be ambitious.
We help the schools. They teach them knowledge in order to succeed in their examinations and so on, and we teach them character so that they may succeed in life.
I think he was a natural entrepreneur, really, but he came from a family of very intelligent, very resourceful people.
He used magazines and radio broadcasts and film, and I think if he was alive today, he'd definitely be doing a weekly blog on the Scouting website. I think Baden-Powell saw something very special in young people. They had a quality which was lost in adult life, and I think people say that he had quite a boy-like quality, and I think what he wanted boys and girls to do was to never lose that sort of eagerness for life, that innocence, and that real sense that anything is possible, that sense of adventure.
Baden-Powell always related best to younger people. He was known as a boy man, he was known as Peter Pan. It wasn't that he was childish, but aspects of his character were quite childlike.
Although you are only a boy, you can, through your training as a scout, do a man's work and show a man's pluck when the call comes.
He was such a huge personality, such a cheerful person, such a driver, and such an energetic and likeable person.
You get pleasure by amusing yourself, by going to the cinema, or playing football, or eating a good dinner. Well, that's all pleasure. But that feeling of pleasure comes to an end when you've finished your game or your dinner. Happiness is another thing. It is a joy which lasts with you always, and it comes largely from doing good turns which help other people.
His legacy, I think, is twofold. Baden-Powell will be remembered as a Victorian war hero, as the defender of Mafeking. But I think his legacy as the founder of Scouting is really in another league. He enabled now 28 million young people and adults to take part in Scouting throughout the world.
He was immensely proud by the time he died of what he'd done, but even he couldn't imagine the scope of it today.
It's probably the greatest export Britain had of the 20th century.
And I wish you all good luck and good camping.